Welcome back to Bullet Catcher Gaming. This is of course Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Today's video is going to be about faction missions. Now, if you've been with the game since the very beginning, you will probably remember faction missions, for example, having rewards. When you completed a certain amount of them, you would unlock certain things, and that was later removed. So we want to look at things like that. What can be done to improve faction missions overall, because if you play them now, you may or may not agree with me, but they can be, they're okay, but they could do with so much improvement. So we want to talk about how we could improve them. What could Ubisoft do to make faction missions interesting, to make people want to play them? Now, first of all, I will just say big thank you to SB3 Spit S3 Act, who is on our Discord. He provided the awesome thumbnail for this video. If you like sharing pictures, videos, things like that of the game, hop on over onto our Discord. It's getting busy on there now. It's getting quite good. We've got a lot of people on there, a lot of friendly people, and sharing stuff and all that. So the link's on the front of the channel if you want to hop on over, and we have competitions and things like that. So let's get into it then. Let's get into faction missions and what can be done to improve them. Now, personally, as I just said a second ago, rewards. The first thing I would do is bring the rewards back. For obvious reasons. People will play it if they're going to get something out of it. Now, we play this game for enjoyment, whether it's for milsim or whether you just, you just like doing a bit of stealth on your own, or whether you like, whatever it is, however it is you like to play, the raid, whatever. The thing is that you're going to play it more if you're going to get more out of it. So the reward system is the perfect idea. Having camos and maybe even weapons, optics, things like that set up in a reward system in the faction missions will make people play them. It's quite simple, really, I suppose. Now, they never really explained why they got rid of this. They just basically said there weren't going to be any. They didn't give us a reason, and I'm presuming it's because of all of the fixes they had to make. I can't actually remember how long they were around for, probably a few months until they stopped it. And I think they had so much more to concentrate on and go and fix that they were like, yeah, we haven't got time to create new things just for the faction missions. But faction missions, they get changed. They continuously rotate. And so if you're going to do that and they're keeping those lives, let's look at some other ways that we could improve them outside of rewards. So how about they set up some story into the faction missions? It hasn't got to be massively in depth. But what about if they start teasing bits of story for whatever the next piece of DLC is going to be? So obviously right now we don't know what the next DLC or what's coming. Hopefully we're going to get some news soon. Everyone's hoping for a year 2. So why not add some small little kind of Easter eggs, some little secret bits, some little hints to what may be coming within things, within those faction missions? I think that's really interesting. It would get people talking about the game. It would get people interested. It would get kind of excitement building. Like, okay, what does this mean? What does that mean? I think that's a really interesting one. So what else could we do? So what about if we could customize faction missions? So rather than them just kind of doing the rotation and refreshing them and every few days, different locations, what about if they just went, this is the faction mission menu, these are your options, so you could have sabotage the computer or whatever, hack the computer, blow up this, steal this vehicle, take it there, all of the options that they have available, but you could choose. So they gave you a list of bases, for example. You could click on them and say, right, I want to do that one at that base, and maybe gave you, it depends how far you want to go with it. They could give you like how many enemies you want on the way, or things like that. What about if you could go into you could set the parameters Like what if faction missions, for example, if you give one reward, going back to that at the end, but it meant that you had to do them on elite, like no HUD. You click on faction missions and your HUD goes, it's gone. So it would make the players maybe who don't use no HUD kind of go, oh, this, it feels different. It feels, playing faction missions feels different. I mean, that could be it's just an option, just a different thing to make it more interesting for those who don't use no HUD. Yeah, so what about if they set up the missions themselves based around some of the kind of interesting things regards to the island of Aroa itself? Now, what I mean by that is when you go around and you look at the collectibles and things like that, there's all these different things, whether it's about, a secret door, whether it's about, strange anomalies, things from the ancient culture of the island, and we've seen the museum that they have with some of these statues and things like that. What about if we find, we know that Sentinel's been looking into them, but we don't really know why. They've never really gone into huge detail about that. So what about if they use the faction missions to tell that side of the story? If faction missions were, instead of just go there and steal this vehicle and get out again, over and over again, what about if it was go here and stop them from digging up this artifact? Or they've already dug up an artifact and they're currently moving it in a convoy from here to here. Stop the convoy, grab the artifact, take it back. And then they could go into more detail about maybe what those artifacts are and why they mustn't fall into their hands and things like that. Use that kind of little bit of mystery that they've set up with the collectibles and what they are and what they mean, and what some of these kind of ancient sites, because they're littered everywhere. What's more involved with those? I think that'd be interesting. And on collectibles, what about if you had, instead of the collectibles that are just randomly picked up around the island, what about if in future, any future DLC, for example, once it goes up, there are no collectibles that you pick up randomly. You walk into a building and it's just sitting on the side and you pick it up and you walk out. What about if the collectibles were more about completing faction missions to get hold of this information from a collectible? So you could have maybe a base commander has a collectible on him. If you kill him, you don't get the collectible or something like that. I don't know. I mean, it could, people might say, well, why can't you just pick it up from him? I mean, you could. But I just think it would be more interesting. You have to get into the base, grab him, get him out. Maybe he has some of the information, but he can then fill you in on the rest. And you could have a kind of Wildlands-esque scene where you're interrogating him in an office or something and getting the rest of the information out, and then the collectible opens and you've completed it. Just something a little bit different. I mean, there's one more thing I think that they could do, and this would be interesting. So if you think about it at the moment, you kind of your only safe space really on Aroa is Erewhon, and Sentinel aren't supposed to know about Erewhon. Or what about if they use the faction missions and just put a little bit of story in there? And it wasn't to do with bosses or any kind of like big lead character as such. But you just had that, a squadron of Sentinel soldiers have been given a mission, and their mission is to try and discover where this kind of resistance, the heartbeat of the resistance, is coming from. And they believe that they've squared the location down into a certain space, or they're trying to interrogate resistance to get this information. And it could be about, the faction missions could be about you going out of your way to stop that information from moving from one place to another. So it could be that they get closer and closer maybe to the location of Erewhon. I mean, you could even build up to kind of an assault on Erewhon, or I mean, obviously that's going to end up being a lot of work for them. And I'm sure that the mechanics of the game, that's not going to work. But, you get my gist. It's just something to kind of make them stand out, something to make them a little bit different. I really like that. I mean, the fact that you would have to kind of subvert and sabotage their efforts to find out where Erewhon was. I really like that. I think it's really interesting. So, I mean, what do you guys think? Do you play faction missions? Do you not bother? Do you wish that obviously we do get rewards as such, but not unlockables? We get, cash, skill credits, and things like that, and weapon parts. Do you wish you got more? Do you think the weapon parts need to be more? Do you think they need to give you more for doing these faction missions? Do elite faction missions need to be, more in depth, a lot longer? They always tend to be a mission at a slightly bigger base with a small piece of intel gathering before you go there, whereas opposed to normal faction missions, which are just like go and kill these people and that's it, things like that. What do you guys want to see? What would you like to see in faction missions moving forward? What would you like to see Ubisoft do with the faction missions? Do you play them, things like that? Let us know. Be really, really interested. Thank you so much for watching, and stay safe out there. We'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye bye.